Good evening, everyone. I'd like to reconvene the September 4th Board of Supervisor regular meeting. We did have a closed meeting, and so we now need to certify.
Yes, do each of you certify that to the best of your knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered by the Board of Supervisors in the closed meeting?
I can't hear very well. It is hard to hear. Volume?
I don't think it's worth it.
It's not. A little bit.
There you go.
Huh. Okay. You good? All right. Now time to vote. Ms. Comer?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
Mr. Carney?
Aye.
And I also. All right. Now we're on to the public hearings.
Yes. Do you want me to give an update?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay, the board has two public hearings this evening. The first public hearing is for the town boundary line change request. This has been a long-term project. The town and county have discussed this, moving what is 3.94953 acres of land into the town, so that it's in the town and the county, rather than only the county. The process was reviewed by the Commission on Local Government, who held a public hearing in this office a few months ago. That Commission on Local Government prepared a report which is attached to this agenda item, and that report identified that the Commonwealth of Virginia felt that this change was in the best interest of the Commonwealth. One of the final steps for the town and county to take is that each body must hold a public hearing to consider an ordinance to document this boundary line change before, and if that is approved by both bodies, the documents will then be, I guess, entered into the record with the court, and the court will make the final decision. So tonight is a public hearing for citizens to provide input on on whether the boundary line change makes sense, and this public hearing was advertised as necessary by the Virginia Code, section 15.2.1427, which requires it to be in the newspaper twice over the last few weeks, which it was in the Rappahannock News. With that, I think it would be appropriate to hear from the public, and then Mr. Goff or I can answer questions on the documents that are attached, if necessary, after that.
All right. So at this time, anyone wishing to speak during the public hearing with regards to the town boundary line only, please be recognized, come up to the mic, give us your name and your district, and we're going to limit it to a 3-minute conversation per person. Yes, sir.
I'll speak some. Name's Pagano.
Oh, please come up to the mic.
Name's Pagano. I'm from the Wakefield district. Town of Washington has a population that's way below what it would require to get even a charter today. Expanding the town for real estate doesn't make any sense to me as a county resident. So I think it's a bad idea, and I oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Ron Macklin, Jackson District. Yes, support it. I mean, yes, the town's population is down, actually, by supporting this, the town's population will increase. And it will also increase the business footprint for the county. And it just makes sense even where the property lies, because it lies in an area bounded by 2 thoroughfares. So to me, it's sort of a no-brainer, so I would hope you vote yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Ron. Yes, sir.
How y'all doing today? My name's George Lee. I live in the Hampton district, and I hate to say this, but I'm 61 years old and I lived here all my life. And you know, it's nothing like coming in like we used to come into town, Little Washington, up through Main Street here, and just see the old houses that's up here. And what we got out here now, my opinion, it looks like a miniature Walmart, and I just don't like it. I remember when I was a kid, we used to sit up here at Skippy's store, and we used to hear the old people at town, Little Washington here, and say, you know, I can't paint my house because the town won't let me, or I can't put vinyl siding on, they want wooden siding. Well, that's a good thing because everything looks old in the town, and I think that's the way we ought to keep it. I'm not for this thing at all, and I think that we should just say no about it and be done with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Penny Cardis. I'm of the Wakefield District, but I'm also the board president of the Rappahannock Food Pantry. If extending the boundary would allow the movement ahead of other affordable housing that Rush River's offering, I think that would actually be a positive for the county. As we support food for our county residents at the Rappahannock Pantry, many clients come in and ask if they can get on the list for the affordable housing proposal that's going on now. And that list is, I'm sure, growing tremendously. If people could just see the number of clients that we have at the food pantry who ask on a daily basis, we know of any options of other possible living arrangements that they could know of for rentals or other places that they could do shared living. People just don't know the problems that we have in this county. So if there's an opportunity by extending this boundary that we can offer other affordable living options, that would just be a tremendous opportunity for the people in the county. I think we need to look at problems that we have, not just what's been here in the past. And I am someone who grew up in the county and have been here my entire life. Went away and came back, but I am an original girl too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Betsy Deedle from Wakefield District. I'm also a member of the core management team of Rush River Commons, and I come to you tonight because I believe we're nearing the finish line. The Rap News headline of almost a year ago, September 21st, said nearing the finish line, and now I think we really are. On behalf of our team and all of our partners, the food pantry, I wish to thank this board for shepherding this process. It's been complicated, it's been long. You have a tough and often thankless job that rarely gets the kind of recognition it deserves. I would also like to thank the Washington Town Council and the civil servants, the commissions, the committees, the task forces, the individuals who have been with us through thick and thin and helped bring us to this point. Some of us sat in this courtroom back in May when the local government commission visited and held a hearing and spent most of the day here. And there was a resounding chorus of support for this effort from all 5 districts, from organizations that represented hundreds of community members, and the commission chair, Edwin Rosado, commended all of us and said, "This is exactly the kind of effort that enhances the Commonwealth's interests." Combining Phase 1's acreage with Phase 2's acreage, and I don't have the exact one, the 3.9 and 5.1, is indeed a wonderful and important step, and we thank you for your vision and your leadership in this process.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start the same way I start every time.
Name and district.
Marlena Lee, Hampton District.
Marlena Lee, Hampton District. I love Rappahannock County. It is like no place else. I haven't been a lot of places, but it is like no place else that I have ever been, and I love it. If it were going to provide affordable housing, I maybe would change my mind. But I don't think that's what this 3 acres of this project is going to provide. This is the town seat, the only historical district that we have in Rappahannock County, and we need to protect it. The feet were held to the fire when the post office was built, and that building looks like it belongs in the town of Little Washington. The buildings that we currently have for Rush River Commons do not match anything else but one other project in the town of Little Washington, and that is a new project that wasn't held their feet to the fire. Again, it is a historical district, and as a board of supervisors, you have to protect our only historical district. If this project has to go forward, I would like to see us wait and put this off for a year after the first phase has gone in and see if that taxes our Washington sewer and water. If it taxes it to a point where, what if the second part of this phase is going to overtax that problem and create an issue where citizens of our county then have to pay for the sewer and water for the town of Little Washington because it taxed that system too much. And my fourth and final thing is, where does a boundary adjustment stop? If we give this 3 acres to the town of Washington, where does it go next? Does the fire hall get boundary adjusted in? Does the old mill get boundary adjusted in? Where does it stop? There is no stopping point once it starts. We're going to be at the library before we're done. Thank you. And thank you all for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No one here. I'll go ahead and open it up to Zoom. Anyone on Zoom wishing to speak about the town boundary line adjustment, please raise your Zoom hand. I see one.
Yep, Phil White, Mayor of Little Washington, and I just want to thank the board for their work with us on getting to this point. I know it's been a long and arduous process, but it's been a great opportunity to work together for something that I think is going to be a good contribution to the community. I would just address the last question that came up about the water and sewer system, and even with the projected growth at the current Rush River project, we're considerably under the capacity of the town system, so it's not necessarily a factor. I just wanted to address that quickly, but again, thank you to the board and to all the residents who've taken part in this process.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Did you want to address anything in particular, or?
Madam Chair, maybe I could just jump in. Since this is of immediate concern to my constituents in the Hampton District, and because by virtue of my position as a local representative in the Hampton District, which includes the town of Washington, for better or for worse, I've been at the center of this discussion with the property owner since the beginning. And while I took a break of several months in the summer of 2022 and thought maybe when I came back to the county, this would all be over, it was still there waiting to be resolved. And I feel very strongly that I have a fundamental duty to walk a very fine line between preserving Rappahannock County as people like the Lees and others have known and loved it for decades, and also trying my best to represent the majority interest of my constituents. And to that end, in looking at the property that became the center of this boundary line discussion, and recognizing that the town of Washington, and let's be clear, the development, whether you like it or not, the Rush River development that we all now see near the post office, that development is solely within the town of Washington. So the boundary line adjustment raised the question about the extent to which we'd be willing to enter into an agreement with the town of Washington so that these additional 3.x acres of land could be also brought into the town. And recognizing this fine line that, at least in my position, I need to walk, and I think we all to some extent have to do the same, balancing broader public interest with real concerns raised by those we represent who have lived here for generations. It occurred to me that if, as one member of our board, I was going to support this, I would only support it with very rigid conditions. And Ms. Lee, my constituent, raised one, and so I want to address that first. There had been discussion about the possible domino effect if we were to agree to this boundary line adjustment. So one of the conditions that I put forward to the town government was that we would agree to this boundary line adjustment only if the town would agree to a 10-year moratorium, and any further boundary line adjustment requests. And I think that this goes to Ms. Lee's question about what's going to come next. And I thought it important, I thought it prudent, and that if we agreed to this, that citizens would have some breathing room and that we would all at least have the time and the luxury to see what, if any, adverse effect might stem from this decision. Through negotiation with the town government, that moratorium period was reduced to 5 years, but I still felt that a 5-year moratorium on any further boundary line adjustment request at least gives our current board and concerned citizens sufficient breathing room to see what difference this will make in our day-to-day lives. So that's the first thing. The second thing, Ms. Curtis did raise the question about housing, and interestingly and oddly to some extent, when the Virginia Commission on Local Governments came and had their hearing, they talked about affordable housing. But one of the key conditions, and I want to be crystal clear on this, one of the key conditions that I required of the property owner in this case in order to get my vote at the time, definitely a swing vote on this issue, was I was not willing to diminish the current county zoning of that parcel if it was brought into the town. Under the current county zoning of that parcel, housing units are not a by right use on a commercially zoned property, period. And one of the concerns raised tonight, and I think it's a valid concern, is we're talking about the county seat in the center of the county, in an unquestionably scenic county that we all, and for which we value its beauty and open space. And I told the property owner directly that I could not support the boundary line adjustment if it meant that there would be a housing development in the center of Rappahannock County. I could not. And so one of the conditions that is in the agreement, at least to get my support for the agreement, was that there would be no additional housing units placed on this acreage that's coming into the town of Washington. And I believe that that was a relatively strict but reasonable request given what I believe is a majority concern among my constituents, that this boundary line adjustment could lead to the construction of a housing development right in the center of Rappahannock County, which is exactly what we don't want. And so I want to be clear that those two conditions, the 5-year moratorium on further boundary line adjustments, and the second key condition, and there are other conditions which are more technical in nature, but this key condition about no additional housing units was not a condition that the property owner was pleased about, but I think to his credit and to the town government's credit, they were willing to consider that as a condition. And so the agreement that we have in place has attached to it a set of conditions, 2 of which I've described, that I do think go to many of the concerns about what is this going to lead to. And so I believe that in the end, the 3.x number of acres that are going to be pulled into the town because of these conditions and because of the key condition about no additional housing units means that any use of that property should be low intensity in nature. And to Mr. Mackela's point, in fact, this boundary line adjustment is not going to add more population to the town. And whether you agree that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll let you reserve that opinion. But I was of the opinion that at a minimum, we could not, or I could not support an agreement that would add additional houses. And I've certainly been criticized for that. I've been criticized for agreeing to it under any conditions. But what I believe we've worked out here is really a set of conditions that, to the best of our ability, and I think reasonably taken into consideration the majority view of our constituents, hopefully achieves the goal of allowing the boundary line adjustment to come through for the sake of efficiency and managing that property from a land use perspective, but without undermining the look and feel and spirit of Rappahannock County as we know and love it. So because I was in the center of all that, I thought it important for me to lay out the fact that this was not an easy decision, and that the only way that I would have voted for it when we did vote on it, which led to the Council on Commission Government hearing, or the Commission on Local Government hearing, was with these key conditions. And I believe all of those conditions are available have been available for a long time, perhaps 2.5 years, at least in draft form for everyone to review. So I thought since so much time has passed, it'd be worthwhile to circle back and emphasize to everyone what this agreement would mean and what it would not mean. And I think the key point is it will not mean housing development on those acres that are coming into the town. And I think that should come as a relief to those who are concerned that this will somehow upend the look and feel of Rappahannock County in this particular spot.
Thank you. Any other discussion from the board?
I just can't help but think about some of the conditions that we talked about early on. Which I think it is sort of like being in a serial show. You kind of go, when last we left the reader, or when last we left this plot line. Right. You know, we talked a lot initially about consideration, and in reading this over the other day, I did notice, you know, one of the by right uses is restaurants, and talking about having a cut of that still funnel up to the county, because, you know, we do have such limited sources of revenue for the county, and that is one thing we are walking away from by feeding making this adjustment to the town, is that possible revenue from businesses that locate there, particularly any kind of, I know meals is definitely a concern, and I apologize, I've had to switch over. My iPad ran out of juice. We ran long in our earlier session. But I mean, that can be quite substantial, especially given a town like the town of Washington that has a reputation for excellent dining. And I mean, the bottom line is location, location, location. And by getting into the town of Washington, the value of that property is great. I mean, just look at the postage stamp property next to the inn that sold for $1 million. Who would have ever thought? So I just wonder if there were any of the considerations we we discussed early on folded into this agreement, and to my mind, those particularly included considerations for the courthouse, asking the town to step away from some of the considerations they would normally hold for the courthouse and sort of grease the rails on the county processes, so we might not be bound to some of those overly burdensome town oversights, and also the meals tax in particular. I mean, I don't want to leave money on the table.
If I'm not mistaken, we did incorporate, and I don't know, Mr. Curry, if you have the list of conditions available, but if I remember correctly, there, in terms of architectural review matters related to what's now the town hall and the church next door, which were traded.
Yeah,
At one point in time, the restrictions on those have been proposed to be lifted as part of these conditions.
I think the town committed to going through the process, just like the county could for the old library. I think what Ms. Smith was referring to was ARB review of the courthouse project, and there was a broader discussion that the town zoning ordinance exempted the town from their own zoning ordinance, which is normal, and we asked the town to give the county the same privilege. And the county's response was to restrict themselves and said, you have the same privilege. The town said, restricted themselves, and now you have the same privilege. We're both restricted.
And could there be, on this acreage, could there be zoning changes at the town level that would then impact the uses to where there could be housing built on them?
Not the way that the condition was written up.
Okay.
And then one thing, you make a good point about meals and lodging tax revenue. And I think we're now, from a county perspective, somewhere in the range of, I think, $750,000 in total annually in meals and lodging tax revenue. And that's across the entire county. And I think one thing that shouldn't be missed here is that to the extent there are real properties placed on the acreage that's at question here in this boundary line adjustment agreement matter, the county will continue to realize property tax revenue, which is a much more significant revenue source under almost any circumstances. And of course, we all know about the Inn at Little Washington and where that meals and lodging tax revenue goes. But I think for a normal food establishment, the contribution to the overall total is generally not hugely significant. And I do recall that there was a discussion along these lines about revenue sharing, but I think with all the conditions in negotiation, the conclusion was, if I recall correctly, that in the end, we will be realizing any property tax revenue generated, which will far outweigh any incremental revenue benefit from meals and lodging taxes. But I mean, I know it's been going on a long time.
Yeah.
And your point is well taken. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that real property tax revenue is the significant item coming out of this.
Right, but if it was staying in the county, we would get both.
Right.
If the development moved forward, but my recollection from the owner is that it was his belief that the boundary adjustment made doing business simpler for him.
I pulled up that limitations on use, just to put a pin in that. Pursuant to the resolution adopted by the Town of Washington on February 13, 2023, the adjusted property shall be zoned village commercial, which does not allow for residential construction. The town will not consider nor approve any rezoning, special use permit, or other legislative action which would allow for residential construction on the adjusted property, and only the adjusted property without the concurrence of the County Board of Supervisors.
So at the risk of asking a strange question, maybe, what's the teeth in the agreement? I mean, all of this is very nice, but what what makes it binding and encourages everyone to do what they said. And
Ultimately, it's gonna be the court's decision, the special courts that will adopt the agreement. So it'll be a court-sanctioned agreement. And of course, it would give us a cause of action if they violated the agreement, that we could go in and ask the court to, enjoin the violate, whatever they do that might violate. So it gives us a right to seek judicial relief.
Anyone else? I just want to thank you in particular, Mr. Whitson, because I know you put a lot of effort and time in something that has been going on since at least February of 2023. And we have talked about this on many occasions, and I think you worked hard to come up with a solution that both the county and the town could live by, even though the town was, or the builder was not necessarily pleased. You pushed enough to get us to where we are today, and I just want to thank you for that.
Madam Chair, if there's no more discussion for members of our board for any potential further discussion, I'll put forward a motion to adopt the provided ordinance, which would be to approve the voluntary settlement agreement for the boundary adjustment expanding the town of Washington by approximately, and now I know the specific number, 3.94953 acres of land, which belongs to Black Kettle LLC, known as Rush River Commons 2, as recommended by the Commonwealth of Virginia Commission on Local Government.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just wanted to state, I think in our previous discussions, we did acknowledge that boundary line adjustments had previously been made between the town and county, but those were all by private owners for just their parcel, their home. It was never for a development purpose.
Any
And
other
for those reasons and reasons of meals and lodging tax, I can't support this.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. This is roll call. Roll call vote.
Aye. Nay.
Aye.
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 Ms. Smith, just one question, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but when we voted previously, before it got to the Commission on Local Government
Sure.
Hearing,
I did recuse myself on one occasion. That situation has since resolved itself and no
Okay.
longer exists.
okay, that's my question.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Moving into public hearing, RCC Chapter 30 Meetings Ordinance Amendment.
The board discussed over the last several meetings the benefit of modifying Chapter 30 of the county code that guides the rules in place for how the board holds meetings. And having had that discussion at the last meeting, authorized staff to advertise public hearing today to consider an ordinance amendment as provided and attached, which I'll pull up in a second, that provides better definition to how public comment should be received and protects the rights of the citizens wanting to provide that public comment. As with the last public hearing, in order to adopt an ordinance not having to do with zoning, it must be advertised pursuant to Virginia Code 15.2.14.27 for 2 weeks, and this public hearing was in fact advertised for that period of time. The changes are not all that involved, and I'll just slip down here to the bottom. Basically would add a section 30-5 to your current Chapter 30 called Public Input Procedures, and provide just a little bit of definition as to how the public input process works. So at every regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors, during the agenda item called public comment, any person may address the board on any topic for not more than 3 minutes. And I think the driving point here is that any person can address any topic, whether we like the content or not, if it's hard to listen to or not. It's the open mic, open forum. After opening a public hearing, which you're about to do, any person may address the board regarding only the topic or application then under consideration by the board. Before opening the hearing, the chairperson shall determine the length of time to be allotted to each speaker and parties, including attorneys if present. This decision allotting time shall take into consideration the expected number of speakers, the complexity of the issues to be addressed, and the controversial nature, if any, of the topic or application under consideration, with the goal of offering speaking time to all interested parties. And then some rules that apply to public comment and public hearings. A person's time may not be yielded. A person may speak only once per public comment period or in a public hearing, except that an applicant or an applicant's attorney may speak in rebuttal or in answer to questions by the board, or is allowed by 30-5C3, which is the next item. The chairperson may reopen the floor after it's closed during the same meeting or during the same public hearing to allow additional comments. So it's the discretion of the chair. There was an earlier section titled Conduct of Public Hearings, and it was modified to remove some preamble language to make it more clear. Those are the extent of the changes, and I did just read over an error here that the board can fix if they're of a mind to fix this, which is complexity of the issuers. It should be issues.
Issues.
Yep. So with it being properly advertised and people here, it'd be good to hear what they think about this.
All right. As the previous public hearing, we'll have 3 minutes per speaker. If you'd be recognized, come up, name and district, and only with regards to this public hearing item.
My name is Karen Hunt, Jackson District. I hope the board is in receipt of my letter regarding this proposed ordinance change that I sent this morning and has had a chance to read it. I would just summarize that the original premise for this was a desire to assure the public of fairness, that civic engagement is valued, and that the board does not want to be so formal that it is rigid. I also hope that the board recognizes the value and importance of public comment in regard to specific applications, ordinance issues, and the like. The ability of citizens to convey important information relevant to the matter at hand would be significantly diminished if a 3-minute cap were to be applied in all instances where other factors such as attendance and other speakers are not an issue. 5 minutes may not seem like a big difference to you, but is a big difference to members of the public. Please consider that perception is important. Continuing to allow the opportunity for flexibility when it is warranted is important to the public. It signals that you truly value what citizens have to say. It is important to the public that the chair maintain the discretion to fairly and uniformly provide the opportunity to the public when a situation warrants. I encourage the board to consider that if the intent is to limit general open comment where any topic can be discussed as opposed to topic-specific public comment, I suggest that this can be best achieved by a policy change. It does not need to also be in the form of an ordinance change. Any policy change can be posted separately on the Notices and Documents tab of the county website so it is trackable and easily accessible by the public. I respectfully urge the board to consider that an ordinance in addition to a policy change could potentially create more liability issues and not less. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I wish this was facing everyone, not just the board. Adina Ordonez, Stonewall, Hawthorne District. I'm here to express my opposition to the opposed rewrite of Section 30. First question I have to ask is why? I've watched hours and hours of these board meetings, and I've seen nothing that suggests we need to amend this section. So if there's some bogeyman of the future that we're trying to legislate against, I would say that's not good governance. As currently written, Section 30 is free speech. The proposed changes are managed speech. Unless you think that's not a big deal, understand that once we start down this road, we'll be like other so-called well-managed counties of Virginia, where speech of the people is so heavily regulated as to make it fruitless for the public to comment on anything. Trust me, I'm a refugee from one of those counties. People don't show up at meetings because they're not permitted to speak, or it's so tightly controlled. Section 30 as currently written gives appropriate authority to the chairperson to ensure that the public comment period is conducted in an orderly manner. In other words, we already have a well-written ordinance to govern the public comment period of our meetings. If we don't like how the meetings are conducted, we, the people, have the power of the vote. If Section 30 is changed as proposed, the options we now enjoy are going to be taken away with this rewrite. And all of this would be done in the name of protecting speech we might find horribly offensive. Again, the bogeyman that has yet to materialize. It is easier to replace the chair than it is to return an ordinance to its original writing. So proceed with great caution. Government by the people is, by its very nature, messy. You want neat and tidy? Then let's agree to dictatorship, full of laws that manage how a person acts and speaks in public, or even in private. We don't need to have our free speech protected. Allowing us to speak freely is our protection. Please don't give it away. And one final note, in reading the attorney's recommendation of a red, green light, whatever, to keep us from speaking over. In a matter of humor, having sat through so many hours of watching the board meetings, that red, yellow might be turned this way because sometimes it's just people like to hear themselves talk. So with that,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Get this right this time. Marlena Lee, Hampton District.
Thank you.
And I love Rappahannock County.
We got that part. It's in here, yeah.
You're going to hear it tonight a couple times.
I know.
So I too also feel that 3 minutes is not enough time for me to articulate to you that 3 minutes is not enough time.
Right.
Much less if I had someone on my driveway that wanted to have a tourist home or a bed and breakfast or whatever else they wanted to do that I wanted to complain about. I have sat through many public hearings taking many minutes. And I also do not feel that anyone talks an exorbitant amount of time. So I also would ask that you leave the ordinance the way it is. And if somebody needs 10 minutes to get their point across, they might need 10 minutes. They might need 15. But we all pay taxes, and that's what part of being a Board of Supervisors member is. Unfortunately, you have to listen to us. And I don't want to be constrained to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ron Macklett, Jackson District, and someone who has been constrained at times. We often talk about not wanting to be like Northern Virginia. We're Rappahannock. What this is, basically this is bringing us closer to being like Northern Virginia, where they do that sort of thing. I think in Rappahannock, we're all friends, and yes, let us get up here and vent a little bit, and everybody leaves the room happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ron. Yeah.
I know, he's trying to make
We might be saving it for later.
That's
Pagano Wakefield. I don't understand why, with as small population as we have here, you need to put some kind of limitation that may be appropriate for Arlington, that may be appropriate for someplace in the district. But we, like Ron said, we're not that. We're a different kind of community, and you don't need to change this. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Good evening, Deke Deacons, Stonewall District. I echo all these thoughts. Any infringement is an infringement on our First Amendment rights. You guys sometimes have issues that you've been able to digest for months, and to limit us to 3 minutes is pretty much unacceptable. 5 minutes, 10 minutes in the scheme of life is really nothing. Let us speak.
Thank you.
John Capielli, Hampton District. I have a problem with the 3-minute rule for, it's not a problem, it's a bunch of problems. The first thing I think about is the television commercial, the radio commercial, where the guy tries to fit all of the rules, all the fine print in 15 seconds. I'll sit at home and record it and come here and play it, if that's what it has to be. Mr. Whitson is my representative. He won't speak to me outside of these walls. So the only time that I get to speak to him is here. And now you're going to limit it to 3 minutes? That's crazy. There are a lot of people that can't get their point across in 3 minutes. The whole point to the feel of Rappahannock County is a little bit slower, a little bit more laid back. And now you want to speed it up to 3 minutes. It's totally opposite against the lifestyle that is here. My family's been here in Virginia for 3 generations, and there's that Southern thing. Well, if we don't get it done today, there's always tomorrow. And now you want to come in here and you want us to speak about everything. It's bad enough that we don't get to speak enough during public comment. At 3 minutes, it's going to be insane. Sometimes you have, for me personally, extended time or been asked a question from somebody on the board, either the planning commission or whatever, and get a couple more minutes. But there are minutes in time. I sit and watch an air compressor fill up a car tire more than 3 minutes. So please, don't do this. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Sheila Gressinger. I have a frog in my throat. Sorry about that. Hampton District. You know, I think this is all sort of a, people are just sort of riled up. It's like, oh my gosh, I can only have 3 minutes. I've been coming to these meetings for like years, and guess what? We've had 3 minutes forever, and there has never been a problem. I think there seems to be a problem where somebody is, oh my gosh, you've now told me I can only have 3 minutes. Sometimes this is for clarification. It's not a way to restrict anybody. It's a way to help people put their thoughts together, because we have had other meetings where it's okay, this is a complex subject, and there are now 5 minutes, and it's okay. And people have been able to do it. I mean, if people are coming to a meeting, they can take notes ahead of time. 3 minutes, to me, really doesn't seem to be a problem. And 5 minutes doesn't seem to be a problem. I think there's a flexibility. I think this whole thing came about because people are just wanting to be able to communicate better with everybody, and it just seems to have stirred up a little bit of a hornet's nest that's not really necessary. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sheila.
Anybody else? All right. Not seeing any hands in the courtroom, I'll go to Zoom. If you'd wish to speak during this public hearing, would you please raise your Zoom hand? I am not seeing a Zoom hand, so I will close the public hearing. You want to start?
Yeah, sure. I would like to say first and foremost that I agree with every single person in this room that thinks that 3 minutes is too short. I am a First Amendment absolutist to a fault. And when we had a discussion about how public comment operates, right now, the way it's written in our ordinance, I'm going to read it for you. Those persons wishing to speak in favor of or in opposition to those matters raised in public hearing before the Board of Supervisors may be asked to tailor their remarks to the following procedures. In order to ensure that all interested parties be heard on issues of great moment and/or controversy, speakers may be asked to sign in upon entering the hearing room and to limit their remarks to a time limit determined by the chairperson. What that does is it allows the chairperson to pick and choose who gets to talk longer. That's not okay with me. What's legally defensible for the First Amendment is to give everybody the same rule. 3 minutes is way too short. This ordinance needs to be changed to protect everybody who wants to come into this room to talk. Not just us, but you, when I'm on the other side of that. That's what it does, is it creates the playing field that this current ordinance does not do. I do not, and I was not here at the last meeting, but this first part, the thing that I feel we can all focus and agree on, this 3 minute thing, I don't think that needs to be there. My intention for at least trying to do something like this was all you have to do is Google it. People are getting kicked out of supervisor meetings all over the country, and they're suing them, and they're winning because our First Amendment is really strong. And so somebody brought up a policy. Policies are fine, but policies exist in the ether. This exists on paper. And if we don't, this is a law, this is a legislative enactment. If we don't follow it, well, we're supposed to be. But this isn't written correctly. So the discussion really, in my mind, is truly about giving everybody a platform where they know they can't be asked to go away just because they're saying something that I don't like, she doesn't like, somebody in the seat doesn't like. And it doesn't matter the context, aside from the favor yelling fire in a crowded room, which you cannot do. But aside from that, people are allowed to get up at public comment and talk about, right, anything. This is not public hearing. Public hearing is different. Public hearing is a different category. We've had public hearings where we get up and you talk about the boundary line adjustment. Public comment, you can come in here and talk about whatever you want. My intention is to make sure that that is absolutely protected, because you get pockets of the country where people don't want to hear things and it's shut down. So I just want to put that out there. I agree with every single one of you when you say free speech. That is the one thing we have here in the United States of America that we need to make sure, and at least me, protect to a fault. So that said, I don't think that this 3 minute thing should be here at all. I think that it needs to be like B, 335B. Is there any way we can craft it so that it could just be, it's more concrete language than this first part. It just says.
You mean set by the chair?
Yeah, because it says up here, the current ordinance basically says that, but it's very squishy.
Yeah, I think there was some conversation about that free speech right, whether it's viewed in a lens of that public comment period, that everybody gets the same amount of time during that public comment period, as opposed to the day session public comment period and the night session. So different people come, and the evening people get 5 minutes, the day people get 3 minutes, or the context of this meeting to the next meeting, where last meeting one citizen got 3 minutes, and then now I'm coming the next meeting and I'm going to rebut that position and I've got 10 minutes. And I think that's where the feeling was that it should be a fixed number. But I think everything's an appetite for risk, and it can definitely be set by the chair, but I think that was the thinking that went into having a fixed number.
Well, so somebody-
For open forum public comment, as opposed to public hearings, which are in their nature different from one to the next.
So I think everybody understands when they walk up into this room, there are rules, and everybody abides. Everybody gets up there, says their name. When the time's done, everybody sits down, everybody's super cordial. Everybody says their mind, and it does, depending on how many people in the room, you think you get 10, sometimes people get 10 minutes, sometimes people get 3. I think there's a way maybe of being able to, because B says that, it says after opening a public hearing, any person, the chair may, where does it say, the chairperson shall determine the length of time to be allotted to each speaker and parties. And I get what you're saying, but I'm not sure why that then can't be adopted for A.
No, I think it can. I'm just telling you
how
A got to be the
Because
where
I
it
would
was.
not,
That was the
right,
discussion.
and because I agree with the sentiment that the 3-minute thing, which honestly, I think Sheila brought it up. I mean, that the rule is, the policy is that, but that's ridiculous. That's too short. And sometimes there's gonna be 3 people in here where they can sit and talk for 10 minutes. And the chair would be empowered to say, yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to reflect that because I just want to be very clear. I genuinely want to make sure that everybody who comes in here can say what they want to say during public comment without anybody ever shutting them down. That is the point. Can't yell fire. But other than that, you can say things that other people would find incredibly distasteful.
I appreciate those comments. I had a related procedural and legal question for Mr. Goff. To the extent that we've advertised this proposed Chapter 30 ordinance amendment in the form that everyone here has commented on, and to the extent that Mr. Carney believes that there should be significant substantive changes made to the ordinance that was advertised, and being mindful of any possible future void ab initio claim for advertising one thing and adopting another, should this now be set aside and re-advertised for public hearing?
If we were gonna redraft the 3-minute language to not include a time period, I think it probably should be. Yeah, I think the safer thing would be to get the rewrite, the next draft out to the public and have another public hearing on the redrafted proposed ordinance amendment.
Great, so I don't know if you need a motion to just send this back for revision and for staff to re-advertise it.
It's like, we'd like to have a motion, tell us what to do.
I think it helps the public know that they don't have to be on guard. This public hearing happened, and the board could adopt this at any moment. So if the board is of a mind that this isn't what you want, a motion saying this isn't what you want, and you want to draft something else,
Yeah,
would
sure.
allay those firms.
So I will make a motion that this is not what we want.
Well said. That's the best motion ever.
As drafted, and that A should reflect the language of B. I know that that's not exact, but how do I craft this into a motion? That A be,
The time limit be crafted in the.
yeah, reflect how it's written in B. So that the chair is empowered in that given meeting as we've always done, determine.
I will second that motion, and it was a good motion, the way you stated it originally, which is, this is not what we want, so thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I would just say that I hope everyone knows that I think since this item landed on the agenda, I have been against working on this. I just think it's not a problem in the county that actually exists. It's a theoretical problem that we see in large localities. And it's not an actual issue for the people of Rappahannock County. I often think of meetings where we had very controversial topics on the agenda and quite lengthy comments from people that felt passionately on both sides of the issue. And The thing that meant the most to me when those hearings were over was getting emails from people on both sides telling me that they felt heard and that why they didn't agree maybe with the outcome, that they thought the process was great. And they felt like the board heard them and they had an opportunity to express their view. And I think my exact words when we started working on this was, it's a big waste of time, energy, and money to work on this, because it simply is not a problem. We've always run our meetings this way. They run exceptionally well. I was a very proud member of our Rules Committee for many years. And I always think back to the consent agenda, which means you don't have to sit and labor through the approval of the bills and all of the things that used to be labored through every month and were time consuming. So I think we have good rules. I don't feel the need to redraft them. And I don't feel the need to redraft them again and re-advertise another hearing at taxpayer expense.
I would just say that I do think the spirit of what the initial conversation, I think we've just gotten away from that a little bit. I really like your motion. This is not what we want, because it's not, we don't want to limit anyone's free speech. We don't want that at all. But we want for Joe to come and know that he has the same amount of time as Tim coming and speaking for the same amount of time. We just wanted it fair. So I fully support your, this is not what we want. This is not what we want, because it definitely took a life of its own, I believe.
I think this board has been polite, and I just hope that it continues to be. I just really think that the language is just too squishy for the public. That's just my message, and I think it's an easy fix. So I just want you all to know that I agree with you. I value this process more than anything.
All right. All those in favor, well, I guess, yes, because it's amended.
The motion,
All those-
not of the ordinance, but
Right,
the motion.
the motion that we do want. Please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. All right, we are now going into public comment.
Madam Chair, just an administrative matter. I just want to make sure that when we adopted the agenda, we did adopt it with one change in the order.
Correct.
Would you mind just reminding me of what that change was?
We moved Q1 under new business RCWSA capital funding support to right after public comment.
Okay, and I think it's important for the public and the folks from the sewer authority to know that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, at this time, I'll open public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, and this is just public comment, please come up, give us your name and your district. And we're hearing that 3 minutes is too short. I'll go for 4. Yes, ma'am.
Karen Hunt, Jackson District. I don't have any prepared remarks for this, but I just want to thank the board for what just occurred, because I've been at this for 2 months now and written you 3 letters and wasn't sure what was going to happen. And so I'm grateful that we have a community where when things are heading in the wrong direction, that we can be heard and that there can be effective consensus to change perhaps predetermined positions given additional insight. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Karen.
Marlena Lee, Hampton District.
Marlena Lee, Hampton District. Again, I love Rappahannock County, and I hope I get to live here all my days. All my days. So I'd like to ask a question about an item on the agenda tonight for RSW, for the Sewer and Water Authority. Is that gonna be a vote tonight to co-sign a loan for them? It will not be a vote
Well, it's a
tonight.
vote, but I mean,
It is a vote.
right, but I don't think, we'd have to, when we get to that, I mean, if your question is about co-signing a loan, I don't know that that's the action that's contemplated. And we
And this
really
is
don't want to get into discussion and
During
public comment.
public comment.
Okay.
Which I'm not.
So
I'm not supposed to do that.
I won't make it go there then. I would like to say that, I know that there are issues with both sewer and water authorities in our county. And I want to apologize to anybody that I offend that is currently being serviced by one of those authorities. But my tax dollars should not be spent to facilitate someone else's sewer and water. I have to fix my sewer if something happens to my sewer on my private property. And it is my opinion that the sewer and water authorities' collections of fees should pay for their facilities. I fear this to be a repeat of the lights at the Rappahannock County ball fields, where the county agreed to co-sign a loan for I believe it was a nonprofit organization that wanted to put the lights up, and then our tax dollars paid for those lights. They're great. My grandson plays football, baseball, whatever under them. They're great. But does he really need to play under the lights? We could play at 4:30 or 6 o'clock instead of at 9 or 8, and I could go home and go to bed earlier. And then there's one other item on the agenda that I would like to comment about. And it is a salary benefit package increase. And the county did a Baker Tilly salary survey, maybe 4 years ago. And the only way I could get a raise was to have my salary, my job surveyed by these people and see if I deserved a raise or not. So my only thing is, if we're gonna do a 33% increase to someone's compensation package, we need to do a salary survey of that to see if that's something that our county has the resources to do, or our county has the population to substantiate. I fear that this compensation package will not be the only one that comes in front of you once this one is approved. And I, as a tax-paying citizen, am just asking you to facilitate the same restrictions that my salary was restricted upon. I had to go through a salary survey, and that's all I'm asking you to do for this, or any other compensation package that comes before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Marlena.
I want to say this into the microphone because I've recently become, Monica Worth, Piedmont District. I've recently become sensitized to the issue of people not always having the same level of hearing capability. And when we have microphones across the tables, as we do, it would be very helpful if everyone would lean in and use your mic to the extent possible. These benches make a lot of noise. There's a lot of squeaking out here. And if anybody just shifts in their seat or reaches for something, it's actually very hard to hear. I recently went to an event, a tragic funeral for a young, brilliant man. And traveling with my partner several states to get there, it was difficult to hear a word that was being said at the front of the room. And many people thought they didn't need a mic. So I just want to encourage you to keep in mind the needs of people who don't have the full use of their hearing. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did just want to say, point of information, if anyone does need assistance hearing, we do have equipment available to assist them to hear our meetings that we purchased a number of years ago at citizens' request.
Now there's a little widget here you can put on your ear and Listen, it's plugged in.
But we'll do our part.
Well, we'll do our part. Yeah, I'm one extreme or the other. I'm either right on it or too far away.
Pagano, Wakefield. I think that the item referencing the increase in salary. I'm sorry. Hey, yeah. Yeah. It's been a long time since grade school. Anyway, probably the major reason I came tonight was to speak in opposition to raising any of the compensation packages for the present board members and hirees. I'm a landowner, I'm a taxpayer here, and the sum total of all the people in this county who are in that class is not a large group. And looking for compensation packages that may well be appropriate for someplace in the Richmond area or Norfolk and Virginia Beach area or other places that are much more populous than this. This is not that place. And if you're asking me as a taxpayer, I want the salaries reduced. I don't want them increased. And I don't think that as a citizen myself, with my own limitations, that there's any justification for paying anybody on the board or whatever they're doing, or as an administrator or anything, the kind of compensation that's being asked for. It's way beyond what is reasonable for this type of environment and the people that are here who have to support it. It's not like that money's coming from some federal grant. This is coming out of our pockets. And anyway, that's my opposition. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Tim.
I want to comment on the sewer authority. Should I do it now?
Yes, sir.
My name is Ray Bach from Piedmont District. I'm speaking about the need for our sewage, wastewater plant operation in our community. A few years ago, I read an article, probably in the Rappahannock News, which gave a little history of the creation of the wastewater system that we have in Sperryville. In the late 1970s, there was a severe drought. Flow was virtually non-existent in the Thornton River. In fact, what flow there was in the pipe came from pipes from homes that had run to the river, and the stench was pretty bad in the river. I mean, it was just sewage in the river. So that was the impetus for creating the system we have today. The system consists of septic tanks for each dwelling unit and commercial establishment. Our lots are small, so there's no room for a drain field to disperse septic effluent. So there's a pump on each tank, excuse me, and the effluent is pumped to a sewer main and delivered to our sewage plant. There, the effluent is treated by aerobic bacteria in a huge tank and processed further and then discharged into the Thornton River in a condition that is acceptable to the environment. Infrastructure is a major issue these days. The neglect of infrastructure is a major issue, I'll put it that way. The American Society of Civil Engineers issues a report card on the nation's infrastructure every 4 years. It's a basic study to rate the status of various transportation, roads, dams, energy, water, wastewater parks, and so forth. Federal and state agencies and Congress use this report to plan and write legislation. Our concern here is wastewater, which is rated D+, both nationally and for Virginia. A D rating means that the category is poor and at risk. The lifespan of wastewater plants is 40 to 50 years, while pipes and mains will last 50 to 100 years. As many treatment plants and collection networks approach the end of their lifespans, the financial responsibilities for operation and maintenance become more costly. Unfortunately, there's been no capital fund accumulation over the past 43 years that this plant has been in operation. In addition, maintenance has been deferred over the years, now making it necessary to make a major investment. We will have to make it with grant money and borrow the rest, and that means increasing rates to cover principal and interest. The following rates that we've been charged show how we ignored the realities of maintenance and capital planning. Rates have to be increased due to deferred maintenance. In 2006, I paid $28.50 a month. In 2015, it went to $40. And I think in 2016 or 17, there was a major repair to the plant, and the rate went up to 50. Now we're going up to 60. There's no option for us. Doing nothing puts Spragueville and the county at risk for major environmental catastrophe to downstream neighbors should there be a plant operational failure. Lawsuits and increased costs will occur because of the emergency conditions. Locally on Water Street, I count 3 maintenance issues that have occurred in the last couple of years, basically emergencies. Last year there was a pump replacement at Estes Manor. 2 years ago, I noticed that the grass in my yard was particularly green and lush near my septic tank. It was also swampy there. So Trey Jenkins and his crew brought in the equipment and replaced a broken elbow, a little pipe elbow. But whatever caused it, we don't know. Something shifted. And then finally, as we speak, there's a recently opened trench on the north side of Water Street where there's a broken pipe in the Thornton River. Repairs are underway, and it's going to be a big job from what I understand. However, deferred maintenance leads to incidents that need immediate repairs and excessive emergency costs. So what the sewer authority now is planning to do is apply for a grant and also take out a loan, and then raise rates to cover that loan. And why we're here is we cannot get that loan unless we have some assistance on that. And that's what I think the authority will be talking about tonight. I mean, I think the authority has a plan to raise the rates, and it's going to cost. I mean, the standards have been raised in terms of water quality and so forth. We have a wonderful stream now. People were bathing in it below the sewage treatment plant during these concerts. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Bob Trafton, Piedmont District. I also would like to say a few things about the Rappahannock County Water and Sewer Authority. This is the utility that, as Ray mentioned, keeps our Thornton River clean and keeps us in compliance with DEQ requirements. I live in Sperryville. I'm connected to the sewer. And I've been attending some of the recent sewer board meetings to better understand the condition of the system and how the system works. I have read the report from Rob Magrum that's on board docs, and I give credit to the current board who commissioned this due diligence study. In reviewing this report, nearly all the plant equipment is past its expected life, with much of it in place since 1984, 40 years, and some of it was replaced in 2001, 23 years. The most surprising thing about this report to me is over the years, there's never been a fund maintained to pay for upgrades and eventual replacement of this equipment. Well, no one likes the idea of rates going up. I certainly don't. I feel it's a pay now or pay later scenario if we don't upgrade and repair this stuff. I know the board's investigated grant opportunities, and I know that all that I understand it's currently available at this point as a low-interest financing through the Virginia Resource Authority. As I understand it, the request is not for any county funds. It's just an upgrade, for this upgrade. It's only the boards of supervisors to support the resolution and to support the sewer board's request for financing for a VRA loan. Please support this resolution. Our river depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Ron Macklin, Jackson District. I want to say a few words about living within your means and kicking the can down the road. Because from what I see with the county right now, and the Water and Sewer Board is part of it or whatever, is that I was raised in the Midwest in a middle-class family, and one of our big things was you got to live within your means. You only got so much in the pot, and you got to dole it out carefully. And if it's not there, you can't spend it. And if you want to, if you want the Cadillac, but you can only afford the Chevrolet, you got to buy the Chevrolet. And right now, what I see here is that, and it's not your fault because it was your predecessors for years have been kicking the can down the road. And suddenly, we're faced with the results of that in that the buildings, which have been talked about ever since I moved here, I think, and doing something, nothing's ever been done. All these other projects, the courthouse, I mean, they've known for years that this courthouse needed something, and suddenly it's all being dumped on us at the same time. And the taxpayers are the ones that are going to have to foot the bill. And population is about 7,300 for the county. Tax bills that are sent out are about 5,800, between 5,800 and 5,900 or whatever. But you take our ever-increasing budget or whatever and you divide it by that number, it's getting to a point where the taxpayers are going to be overwhelmed. But what is our choice? Because we've got to make these payments. And I don't know what the answer is. But in regards to employee compensation, my thinking is, if we're going to pay over the average or whatever on compensation, we're going to have to do it across the board. We can't single out one individual and go, we've got to pay way up here for him, but the school teachers and the deputies and whatever, they're going to have to take these substandard wages because that's all we can afford to pay. And that just does not make any sense to me. And it's something we're going to have to deal with, and I don't know what the answer is. But that's where we're at right now. And you guys got to deal with it. And it probably wasn't what you were bargained for. And I don't envy you because this is reality, and we're in a real bad spot right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Sheila Gressinger, here we go again. Hampton District. I spoke about this afternoon, and obviously it needs to be addressed again. I'm talking about the compensation that's on the agenda this evening. I think I need to put this in perspective for a lot of people because some people are comparing it to what is in surrounding counties. The history of this is John McCarthy in 2016, that was 8 years ago, John McCarthy left the position and he was making $160,000. With the cost of living increases, if he were still here as a county administrator, he would be making $214,583. That's $35,000 more than what's being currently asked for by the county administrator at this time. In 2017, when Gary Curry came aboard, he had a salary of $135,000. With the cost of living, that's gone up to $172,500. There was an additional package that has been asked for, which would bring it up to $175,000. I want to also put this in perspective. When John McCarthy left, the county had a whole lot on its plate. We had an interim county administrator, Debbie Kaiser, who did the best she could, but there was a huge amount of negativity, and so Debbie left. Then we had an interim supervisor, county administrator, Brenda Garten, who was a no-nonsense lady. She rode a Harley, and she was dynamite. She was here, and what she did with a period of time, she was we'll get things done. And so she left no prisoners. But when she left, she did an exit interview that said, she didn't assign blame, nothing. She said, these are the things we've accomplished. These are the things we're working on right now. These are things that still need to be done, accomplished. So when Gary came here, he had what I call, instead of a plate over brimming, he had a platter. And to his credit, he has performed with brilliance. The first thing he did, and I said this afternoon, we had a comprehensive plan that people have been dithering about for years, and we were not in compliance with the state law. So it was a bit of a problem. And Gary actually recommended a group called the Berkeley Group to come in as consultants. And what they did, they came in, in planning commission meetings, people just kept adding stuff, so then the thing got kicked down the road. The Berkeley Group came in and they said, first of all, you must be in compliance with the state law. That is the critical element here. So they said the things that needed to be accomplished. Then they said, here are other things that can be possibly addressed later by addendum. And these are other things that we could be working on for the next comprehensive plan that has to be reviewed every 5 years. So he got the thing in compliance, and so we were back on track. The other thing, if any of you have lived here for a while, you know about Flatwood. It was a colossal disaster. It was a mess. And what Gary Curry did was assess the situation, and as things occur, it takes time, but he got things organized, redid Flatwood. I think I mentioned this afternoon, I think Mr. Woodson was helping with part of this. And so Flatwood had a complete redo. And so now when you go to Flatwood, it's all organized. I know, 3 minutes. It's all organized. And actually, I think we're making money now. So I think he's earned every cent that he's asked for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sheila. Diane.
Oh, and Mr. Capielli. Somebody come on up.
Diane Bruce, Piedmont. A quick question. Can you tell me what's going on around Sperryville? They're going to change the road or change the direction, or what's happening?
You're going to do some work in the village, Diane. It'll be work there at the corner at Pete Estes' old house regarding that wall.
Yeah.
And also that puddling that happens through there. They'll be taking corrective action to install a drain and a pipe. Due to the nature of the work, it will be night work because they don't want to attempt to divert traffic during the day. It would be too much traffic to handle. But they will be commencing that work, and it all is in relation to that ponding around that barrier wall at the Estes house. This is apparently something that's been on VDOT's radar for quite some time to address, and they particularly want to address it before freezing starts, and they start to have issues again with ice forming all through that corner.
Because I see little white lines and little arrows in various places. There's one right in front of my house. And And where are they gonna direct the traffic? How's it gonna get through
Well,
town?
this is public comment. I'm sorry. We're not supposed to be.
Okay, well,
gonna take, I think.
I just was hoping that if I answered it, I would help keep it to a short period, but
Thank you.
sometimes that doesn't work.
I called VDOT and they wouldn't tell me.
That's all it is. Plus I do the email.
Okay, the second thing is that I think it's kind of sad that the table is not here for Donna, that she has to put her computer in her lap. I noticed that the Planning Commission, the BZA, you all put up another table over here, and anyhow, just a thought. On the Water and Sewer Authority, I'm not sure there's anything we can do. We have to have it. We can't live there if we don't have the sewer plant working. And for those people, and this has been said many times, we don't live in Sperryville, we shouldn't have to pay for it. Well, you know, I pay taxes, and my taxes go to all of the things that everybody else in Rappahannock County benefits from or enjoys. I pay towards law enforcement, I pay towards county administration, I pay towards emergency services. So I don't really expect that the rest of the county should have to pay for our system, but I think it's fair to share. And I think that Sperryville has to have this system. We were required to have it by some agency of government that forced the town to put this system in. It is not supposed to be for growth, but if Sperryville has to shut down because nobody will help us pay for it, what's going to happen to the businesses in town? What's going to happen to our taxes? I certainly hope you will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
John Capioli, Hampton District. Earlier today, there was a discussion about people going the wrong way on 211. They don't want to do it when I'm driving down the road with a truck with a snowplow on it. They always want to do it when I'm in my car or my motorcycle. However, if you go to the end of Zula Road and 55 in the Middleburg, they have a lighted system that is there that if somebody goes, because you're all looking for alternatives, they have a system that if somebody starts coming down the road the wrong direction, it lights up and starts flashing red and white. And it's on a solar panel. So it's not lit during the day. I know how we're all about no stoplights in Rappahannock County, but it would be something that gets your attention. It's about 8 feet tall and about 3 feet across. I saw it yesterday when I went past and thought, wow, that's what we need out by Armada or other places, because I live right on 211. The people that come up and down the road in the wrong direction is a regular thing. I tell my friends when they're going home from my place towards Warrenton, stay on the opposite side of the road. Stay as far over as you can to the left, because some idiot's going to come the other way, and they call me and tell me, yep, there went somebody. So you got to worry about getting run over. You got to worry about deer. And now they're fixing the flooding down by my house. Second thing that I spoke about earlier today is about the compensation package. I know for a fact that there are at least 3 people in this room right now that make more than Mr. Curry and would be upset if they were offered his salary. And if you look through the people in the county, the big properties that have 500 acres, 1,000 acres or more, these people are able to afford it because they're making more than that. I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut. The average people's homes, we were looking at $1 million an acre. There's 38,000 people there. I built homes for some of the richest people in the country. His salary is what I paid my job supers. We're not even talking what I paid myself, but a job superintendent for 18 months, got a percentage of the project, and I paid them $300,000, $400,000 for 18 months. So people who are looking at his salary are big aren't making that kind of money. But it's not about what that individual is spending. It is what our tax dollars are spending. And that's why I think that he's actually worth it. Third issue, you're going to be talking about having another discussion about the contractor's yard. Very involved. I still think that we should come up with something, maybe 15 acres and up for the larger class. I already meet all the rest of the regulations for it and exceed them. I even have my own fire truck, so we're not worried about fire suppression. I use the same oil company as the county does for my oil. And as far as dust control is concerned, I've put 750 truckloads of millings down. There is no dust. And yet I'm on less than 25 acres. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick Kohler, Jackson District. I love Rappahannock. We do have some problems with the can being kicked down the road. I'll have to agree with Ron on that. It's happened for years and years and years. And I don't know why, but it has created more problems. There were huge problems at the school for a while. All these things, some of these huge problems which could have been handled with better just regular maintenance. But we are where we are today. Regarding contractor yards, I feel that 50 vehicles is too high, particularly for a small contractor yard. Suppose it was 50 tractor trailers stored on 10 acres. As I recall, there's a limit on total area used for storage, but if not, there should be. But we must also reduce that number to something vastly smaller that makes sense for small as well as large contractor yards. I just think 50 things stored out there could be huge. You just don't know what's going to be there. I also think that the lighting should be required to be downshielded and 3K lighting with a total number of lights limited through examination of some sort of a site plan, if there's going to be one, so that we can monitor and manage to comply with dark skies as well, which I think everybody in the county is very happy about and proud of, and we'd like to keep. We don't need a prison atmosphere with 1,000 lights. Regarding Mr. Curry's proposal, I had the opportunity to get to know and work with Mr. Curry on numerous occasions during my 4-year tenure on the Planning Commission. He's bright and hardworking. I would be sorry to see the county start another long search for a county administrator, perhaps find itself in the position of hiring an interim and go through the vetting and eventual learning curve process. It's a long and expensive process to start all over again. We did this before. It cost time, money, and aggravation. As I recall, I thought we went through 3, but maybe we went through 2 other administrators before we got to Gary. It seemed like 3. Mr. Curry is intelligent. The members of the board are intelligent. You're all this is a very intelligent board. This is a powerful board. Please work together on a package which can satisfy everyone to the best possible degree. In this day and age, we have many electronic platforms that carry negative messaging and comments, and which tend to heat up the atmosphere. Let's keep this relaxed and positive so all parties come to a satisfactory conclusion, preferably longer than 4 years. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, Lloyd, Hampton District, I guess I'd first like to address the table issue. It is a laptop that she has.
Good point.
Secondly, regarding the salary package, we've been here about 10 years. I've been coming to these meetings for about 6 or so, and I was always impressed with what I saw here with the county administrator, with his ability to get things done, his approach, and everything. I think for a municipality of our size, we're lucky to have somebody of his caliber here, and we should do what we can to keep him there.
Thank you. That it? Okay. All right, opening up the public comment to Zoom. Anyone on Zoom wishing to speak, please raise your Zoom hand. All right, if you'll give us your name and your district, please.
This is Sharon Luke, if you're talking to me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I'm in Piedmont District. I don't live in Sperryville, I do own a house there. I would like to ask you to support the request of the Rappahannock County Water and Sewer Association. As I understand it, we're not actually asking you to pay for this, but I believe the Rappahannock County Water and Sewer Authority has arranged for a loan, but the county needs to support it or back it, which of course does mean the county could get stuck paying for it if the Rappahannock County Water and Sewer Authority didn't. But there's a difference between this situation and the lights at the high school, which the county was asked to back that, and they ended up having to pay for it, because in that case we had a nonprofit that was just trying to raise money and apparently was not able to do it. In this case, we actually have taxpayers and citizens who are paying monthly, bills, and I believe the plan is that we would be paying for the system ourselves, and you would only be asked to pay for it if for some reason that failed, which I can't understand why it would. But anyway, this is really critical to the whole town of Sperryville, and also to the Thornton River and people downriver. So I'm not sure we have an option on this, so I would ask you to please support the Rappahannock County Water and Sewer request for your backing of their loan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom? All right, not seeing any hands raised, I'll go ahead and close public comment. And the next item will be the RCWSA Capital Funding Support Agreement.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Woodard, and I'm the chair of the RCWSA, Rappahannock County Water and Sewer Authority, and we're located in Sperryville, Virginia. In addition to running the sewer plant, we also take care of the wastewater treatment plant for the 2 Rappahannock schools. I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for the time you've given to us this evening. I think Sharon Luke, what she just spoke about, explained a lot of what I was going to say, so I won't repeat it, but I am coming before you tonight to ask that you vote and approve what is called the support agreement for the RCWSA. And this is in order for us to pursue the purchase of a local bond with VRA, Virginia Resources Authority, for the very necessary work we need to undertake at the Sperryville plant. All of our equipment is now over 40 years old. You've heard that tonight, and it is in need of replacement. In order to keep the rates low, there was never any provision made during all the years we've been operating to put money aside for the future replacement. So now we're faced with that as our main problem. And no is not a solution to the problem. But before I open up for questions from the Board of Supervisors, please allow me to introduce you to 4 of our 5 hardworking board, and they are all volunteers, donating hours and hours of time. We have Andrew Haley, if you want to stand or wave, whatever. Andrew Haley's our vice chair. He has been on the board since 2013. Will Lloyd is also a retired engineer, super knowledgeable. He came on the board since 2023. Ken Reed, who's not with us tonight because of his illness.
He's on Zoom.
He's on Zoom.
Okay. Hi, Ken. Can't see you. And he's been on the board since 2022. Dwayne Seiler, acting secretary, has been on the board since 2023. And I joined the board in 2018. And everybody said, why are you doing that, Sherry? You have a good life. Why would you come to the sewer board? And I said, I love Sperryville, just the way Marlena says, I love Rappahannock too. I'll say that to you, Marlena, but I do love Rappahannock. I've been here over 50 years. I'm 73 years old, and I love helping and working. Many of you know I've been very community-minded throughout my years here, and also a business person, an entrepreneur. So when I joined the board, I thought I can make a difference, and I became the chair in 2021, and believe that we have come very far under my leadership. Pamela Parker, our plant manager, has been with RCWSA since 2010. She's also very invaluable. And I'm going to ask Will Lloyd to come up with me so that a lot of the questions you ask, if you ask them, I may not be able to totally answer. So I've asked Will to assist. And before I stop talking, thank you. Bonnie Jewell has been an incredible asset to this county. Nobody could have done on our board what Bonnie has done for us. It's her knowledge, her breadth of experience that has put us with VRA. And I want to mention that VRA, the rate we're looking at is right now between 3.25 to 3.75 for a 30-year term. Now, you tell me today where we can go to a bank or any place to get that kind of rate, and that's all Bonnie's work. However, Bonnie was notified about 2 weeks ago that unless we got a support agreement for the RCWSA for this, we would not be eligible for this bond program. And again, it doesn't mean you have to pay for it. It just means you understand the need, you support it. Worst case, if something happens and we're turned upside down, the state has the right to try and withhold some funds that they would ordinarily pay you. But it is not like you are saying, yes, we're taking over on this note. So, questions?
Hi. I don't know why you went on the sewer authority, except that I was on it too, and people
Yes.
asked me the same question, and I think it's a great way to serve your community and learn about stuff that engineers otherwise know about that we mere mortals do not. And I want to thank you for your leadership and for Mr. Lloyd's recent technical contributions to the board. He's a constituent of mine. And when he stepped up for this, and I think Van Carney was the one who mentioned Mr. Lloyd's interest in joining, I thought how fantastic. And it turns out that it's made a world of difference to have his contributions on the board along with all the other members who give of their time. I did have a couple of questions, and these might be questions for Ms. Jewell in particular, but before I get there, since kicking the can seems to be the theme of the night, I'm going to fall on my sword a little bit here and say that to the extent that the can was kicked by prior sewer authority boards, I was one of those people. And I was just quickly trying to confirm the date, but if I remember correctly, in October 2012, before it turned into Superstorm Hurricane Sandy, if I'm not mistaken, and Andrew would remember this, that system when it came through Rappahannock County, and it was not a catastrophic system at that point, overloaded the plant to such an extent that, and hopefully I'm getting the terminology right, hydrostatic pressure in the equalization tank basically collapsed it. And because I was following the lead of very thoughtful, thrifty people on the board,
Yes.
including Ken Thompson, who I love and adore,
Yes.
we all gave ourselves a collective pat on the back when we hired local great welder Rick Naraki to come in and save the day with come-alongs and steel that he bought from a distribution center. And when we found out that it costs only $22,000 instead of the $250,000 that would have been required to replace it, we thought that we had done something great. And I think at that time and in that place, with, you know, the economy was different then. And I think our eye was on keeping rates low. We kicked the can, and I believe that part of the revamping work that is contemplated by the money that you may end up borrowing involves replacement of the equalization tank. And I have to imagine that equalization tank, I haven't looked at the details, but my guess is it's no longer $250,000 to replace it. And so as one of the can kickers, I agree that we should not kick the can any further, because while I think we tried to do the right thing by the ratepayers and keep the rates low, in the spirit of what others have already mentioned during public comment tonight, I don't think that no here really is a solution. And my questions for Ms. Jewell, I think Ms. Lee, Ms. Lee raised the comparison with the field lights, and I want to understand very clearly two things. One, it's my understanding that the incremental increase in user fees over a 5-year period, plus cash on hand in the sewer authority's account, and I remember you always had like $250,000 in the account that was leftover money from the original 1980s grant. I want to understand clearly that the rate increases are intended for and are sufficient to cover the debt service on the loan. That is, to the extent that the sewer authority board and its bookkeeper do a good job, the same job they've been doing today to collect fees on time from all users in the system, is it not correct that the debt service contemplated here would be covered by those rates that would be required of the people in the system?
That is correct. These rates were calculated based on the assumed growth in operating costs, as inflation tends to occur every year, as well as the estimated debt service on the $1.4 million loan. Yes.
Okay, so let's be clear, this is not, in fact, a situation where, at least from a debt service perspective, that Rappahannock County taxpayers outside of the Sperryville sewer service area will be asked to pay anything into it. Is that correct?
That is correct, so long as the Water and Sewer Authority does in fact address their rate increases on an annual basis, and is able to, with the revenue that they bring in as a result of those increased rates, pay the debt service, which is estimated at between $80,000 and $85,000 a year.
Okay. And then my other question is, in going this bond route, I understand that Ms. Lee raised the question of co-signing, and I jumped in immediately because I never came in with the expectation that we were co-signing any kind of loan. And I understand clearly that we are basically providing support. And my question is, what does that mean in the context of this bond? Number one, what is our support? And Ms. Woodard already hit on it a bit, but I'd like to hear from you since you've been doing the background work on the borrowing. And I want to make sure that everybody understands the level of risk there. And finally, is there any other bond configuration where a locality like Rappahannock County in this case would not be in the position that we're being asked to be placed in. In other words, if there was a bond initiative like this in some other locality, is it fair to say that the county or the city or the municipality would still be required at a minimum to provide the support that we're being asked to provide here?
Got it. So let me answer your last question first, because that's top of mind. So, absent a different financial status for the Water and Sewer Authority, that being if they had several millions of dollars of reserve, no, I do not expect that VRA would require the county in that instance to backstop this loan, which is basically what's being asked. But that's not the situation that the authority has at the moment. VRA requested and received the last 5 years of Water and Sewer Authority audits, and it was that financial information that they based their requirement for this support agreement on. What the county is being asked to do is not co-sign the financing agreement. The financing agreement itself is between VRA and the Water and Sewer Authority. The county is being asked to provide a support agreement, which essentially is a backstop to this loan. And while the county is not on the hook to pay directly the debt service payments in any instance, if the Water and Sewer Authority were to fail to pay any one of their debt service payments in the future, first, the authority would come to the board and tell the board what the situation was and what the required payment really to the Water and Sewer Authority would be to allow them to make that payment. Should the Board of Supervisors fail to appropriate that for the payment of the debt service, VRA could then petition the governor to withhold state funding that the county would otherwise receive in any given year.
And this might be a question for Mr. Lloyd. Knowing what you know about the wastewater treatment system in Sperryville, let's say that the county is backstopping this loan, and you are, and I assume Ms. Woodard would be able to tell me that your collection rate from your users within the system is quite high, at least in the 90-something percentile. In other words, you can count on your ratepayers to pay.
You do, yes.
And I know they're all
about 3 that don't. But
right, and that's, I think, historically been the.
And I don't know if you're aware, but the county has recently taken over our accounts receivable. The county's recently taken over our accounts receivable and are in a better position to collect from folks that don't pay.
We like our treasurer and we like Ms. Jewell. They're very good at collecting debt. So my question is, if you borrow this money and you are collecting fees from your users at the rate that you're collecting now, all of that seems like there should be little risk for the county. My question is, from an operational standpoint, with this money and with the upgrades that would come with this financing, is there anything out of left field, hugely significant, that could suddenly arise that would require for you to divert so much of your cash balance towards something unexpected that you would then be in a position where you're pinched in your ability to cover your debt service? Or is it that the money that you would be borrowing is going to be used to upgrade all of the critical components of the plant? So really there's nothing left out there that would, and I know you probably can't give a guarantee, but I just want to make sure that there are no unknowns or no giant significant unknowns out there that would.
Absolutely no unknowns. So realistically, this loan and this project is fixing the plant. It is not fixing the collection system, which is also 40 years old.
Right.
That's the next phase. We don't know what's required to fix it, but we know it needs fixed. We just had a force main break recently, this week, I think. 60 grand is the repair cost right now, which we didn't budget for. So, yeah, there's going to be future costs in addressing the collection system.
Okay. So, so in a situation like that, and I applaud you all for not coming to the county. And I know when we were talking about, when we had COVID relief money, we put some COVID relief money into the authority to do a study and some other small things. And frankly, some of us received criticism along the lines of, hey, that's county money that you're directing towards Sperryville that doesn't benefit everyone. So I applaud the fact that you've come to us not to ask for overall county support for these upgrades. I just want to make sure that all things being equal, that we've done our due diligence to make sure that this contemplated rate change over a 5-year period will be sufficient to leave you in a position to service your debt without putting the county in any kind of jeopardy.
I would hope that we get a hero like a Chuck Humphrey that wants to come, and somewhere they may be out there. Great people are moving into Sperryville, and I know a lot of them. So yes, they're hearing from me about how about instead of FedEx sewer plant, we can do so-and-so sewer plant. We will continue to look for funds.
And aside from these funds and what you're going to be doing to the plant to upgrade the plant, will you still have additional money with which you can address the collection system deficiencies?
So the EDUs and the EDUs were calculated based on a budget we put together, which included operational costs,
Okay.
certain amount of repair costs moving forward each year, and
Okay.
things like that.
Okay.
I mean, it did not include a wholesale replacement of the collection system.
Right, of course not.
We have no idea what that's going to entail until we get into that project, which is down the road. But yeah, the budget, as best we could put it together, and the EDU rates should support what we need to do.
Okay, that's important. So you'll have the liquidity to address issues that come up, like the line that went out 2 weeks ago.
Within reason.
Within reason. So there's some financial padding that is part of this borrowing, and it's not that the entire amount is going to go to one fixed asset and then
No,
you're
the
throwing up
entire
your hands, how are
amount,
we gonna pay for anything else?
the
And that's
enti-
kind of where I'm going with those.
I mean, the entire loan amount is intended to go to that one fixed asset.
There's no money to address the other issue
No,
of the
there's
collection
not.
or the I&I.
That's correct.
Which that brings me to my point when Mr. Trafton was speaking. He said we either pay now or we pay later. You will pay now and you will pay later too.
I don't know what you mean.
Well,
You say I&I, it is going to get a lot of help from the new EQ tank because it's much bigger and it's going to allow much more of the overflow that right now we can't handle. But it will allow it.
I'm just making my statement based on the communication from Mr. Lloyd where he had stated that there would be additional work needed for the I&I.
Right, so the collection system is a lot of things. It's the septic tanks, it's the pump stations, it's the force mains.
Right.
And the deficiency in all of those is what causes the I&I. So not only do we have old septic tanks and old pump stations and old pumps and old pipes, we also have broken septic tanks, pipes, and everything else is letting all this flow in, which creates a problem at the plant. So the larger EQ tank does allow us to better accommodate that large flow, but we still have to fix that collection system.
I wasn't saying we wouldn't fix it, but it gives us a little more relief. Our existing tank can overflow.
Right.
Can I ask a question? The model that has been built to drive these projected rates incorporates some expenses for collection system
Some
maintenance.
nominal expense, yeah, for maintenance and as we start to replace.
More than is in the budget today?
Well, the budget today is the budget. There wasn't a budget before.
But there's some budget in the projection to address find and fix type collection system issues?
We have budgeted in order to replace some pumps each year and to replace pump controls each year, and that's about all that we have.
So, how much more capacity would the new tank give you?
Plant capacity,
To manage the.
zero.
Equalization capacity.
Equalization capacity. It will
Offhand-
accommodate overflow. The current one is not.
So
Is that
the
right?
tank was sized based on the flow data that we provided to our consultant, who's on the line. And that size tank was selected to best accommodate the flows that we have been seeing and allow us to put that flow through the plant at a rate that we can treat it.
Okay, and that's obviously the flow that the broken collection system is generating in the
Correct.
plant.
That's right.
Okay.
And in your judgment, if you fix this equalization tank and you do not fix anything else, and we have an event like a tropical storm, is your best guess that hopefully what overflows now, we get heavy rains and it goes into the Thornton River, that this tank would be big enough for now, if all the lines are still broken, to maintain hopefully all of it, if not most of it?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's no idea. But the goal is not to expand capacity right now, it's to fix the tank.
Yeah, we cannot afford, you think $1.4 million is a lot. It'll be triple that if we try to change the capacity of the plant.
Got it. My next question is, would there be anything, Bonnie, about preclusion of paying it off early, for instance, if they found a grant? Would there be a
Yes,
penalty for that, or, go ahead.
There's not a penalty, there's just not an option really to do that, because when the state goes out and they sell these bonds, they're doing it based on a 10-year call. So the soonest you would be able to pay it off would be 10 years from
Okay.
now.
That's early.
And sort of,
If we find money like that, we can fix our collection system.
yeah.
We don't need to pay the loan.
Absolutely. So, you know, I grew up on the river, and I remember when they put it in, and I remember what the river was like before they put it in, and my dad wouldn't let us swim in the river. And I know what happens, and I've been a ratepayer. It's not a good situation. And that's a big increase. And so I talked to Sherry, and that's going from 50 to 98, right?
In 5 years.
More or less, yeah.
It's not one jump.
Oh, no, I know.
Yeah.
But it goes from 50 to 98.
The
And-
hardest people that will be hit will be the commercial people.
Right.
Residential pay for one EDU, no matter if it's $50, $60, or whatever.
Yep.
So they're affected, but not like the commercial people are.
Exactly. And I have been a ratepayer when we
Yes.
had the old brewery down at the old spot. And I agree that the can has been kicked way too long. And the difference here, and Sharon brought this up, that there was a difference between the 501c3 or whatever group borrowed the lights, is that you guys have 40 years of people paying.
That's correct.
40 years of people paying. What's that?
That never made a profit.
Yeah, no, I know. That never made a profit. But you've got 40 years of people paying, and there's a history of people paying for this thing.
Yes.
I personally think this is a fantastic idea that needs to happen. All you have to do is go stand next to that river when it's raining, and you can smell the sewage going in when it's bad. And I have done it many times. I fully support this. I think the hard thing is that rate jump. But it's the cost of reality.
Another way to look at it too is the ratepayers have been getting a steal for 40 years.
I
These
have to say,
rates
on
should
behalf
have
of the
been-
ratepayers that I represent on this board, the ratepayers have been paying what's on their bill, as they should as ratepayers.
I understand
So
that.
to guise it as a steal is not fair.
Well, phrase it how you want. You've been paying below market value.
We've been
on-
paying what was on our bill,
I get
Will.
it. They haven't been billing you enough. Is that better?
Yes,
Okay.
if you have not been billing me enough,
Very
that
good.
is correct.
Okay. For 40 years.
Yes, sir.
So they've been saving money for 40 years, and now it's time to pay the piper. In addition to that, we built a house not long ago, and I had to put in a septic tank, a pump tank, a drain field. I've got to maintain that every year. I'll bet that comes pretty close to $100 a month for my septic field.
Well, to Mr. Curry's point, and to Kira's point, is that I think the real cost of doing business down there is, you just said, it's high. That's the real cost. That's without calculating in all the other things that are gonna need to happen.
Right.
And this is just reality. And I think it's hard, because I think when people get used to paying, and I paid them, and I thought I was paying too much, and I get it. I mean, I think it's hard. But again, I mean, I literally grew up on the river. I mean, I think this is a good plan, and I think that you guys have worked really hard to do this, and thank you, Bonnie, for figuring this out. Sure. And I hear you guys that you can still go out and find money. There's a lot to do.
Well, the hope is we'll find money to help us on the collection system side.
right.
But again, there's no guarantees, right?
Yep.
We thought we'd find money for this, and there was none.
One question I did have about the collection system, and we talked about this not too long ago. I mean, I always had this dream of, and I actually got in touch with the American, I think it was Ken Reed will yell at me for not remembering this. I think it was the American Waterworks Association chapter in Blacksburg at Virginia Tech. And my hope was each summer to get some of those students in that local waterworks chapter to come up here and just establish a baseline assessment of the collection system, property by property. I just wonder, have those sorts of things happened yet where you or are you planning to survey the collection system to know what is out there, or is it just one big unknown? I mean,
I think we know what's there, if that's what you're asking.
Pumping, tank pumping schedule, that kind of thing, and
We've got a long way to go in a lot of things.
Okay.
Okay. One of the biggest problems we have is we don't have paid staff.
Right.
So we don't have anybody to manage this
Right.
idea, right?
We
We
have
put a-
one full-time.
Right.
She's busy.
Who runs the plant?
No.
Who runs the plant,
Right, I
right?
got
We
it.
don't have a management level staff person who can oversee, put these things into place, do this stuff, get all this done. Nobody exists that can do that. We can barely keep up with what we're doing here.
I guess my question though is, it seems like in terms of the collection system and just getting a handle on what's there and what acute problems need to be fixed. I mean,
We have ideas
yeah,
on
steps
how
can
to
be
get that
that are
done.
not capital intensive. That
Yeah, well, that probably won't happen. It's gonna be a study, it's gonna require an engineer,
Okay.
it's gonna require scoping pipes and
I see.
figuring out what
I
we
see.
got.
Okay. Yeah.
But we haven't even begun to think about that yet. That's next.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna make a motion unless, Christine?
I think everyone knows that I can't support this. I love the river. I love the village of Sperryville. I love Rappahannock County. I think asking people to pay twice what they're currently paying, and then kind of expecting to hope to find money. I think once you adopt this, that there won't be any way to pursue grants to offset this. And I think if there's any opportunity to pursue grants or other ways to leverage funding for this, we should do it before we accept this agreement. I understand that this is awarded twice a year, or it's...
We have a very short window.
Yes, for the fall pool,
I'm sorry, I wasn't finished speaking. Is it awarded twice a year? Does this pool happen
there are
twice a
generally
year?
2 pools per year, yes,
And the other one would be in the spring.
correct.
Is there anything to preclude us from applying in the spring rather than in the fall?
There is not,
Thank you.
other than the anticipated project schedule.
Right, so a number of things. We chased all the grants up on them. Okay. This project is not going to get less expensive. It's only going to get more expensive. If we start having failures at the plant, there's a very high likelihood you can kiss this $1.4 million goodbye to it anymore. So we've kicked the can, we've stepped on the can, we've run over the can has holes in it. We need to fix the
Well, I certainly appreciate your comments, Mr. Lloyd, and I think that anybody that serves with me on this board knows that I'm not a can kicker. I tried very hard to address the courthouse and the attendant buildings on this campus and, met with resistance from my peers. I understand what you're saying. I think this is, to my mind, the glomming of three issues. Does the plant need work? Yeah, it sure does. Can we scope the work to reduce the costs? Maybe. Can we find other financing to offset the costs? Maybe. And we've already jumped to the conclusion by the time it came to the board it's going to cost us $1.4 million and you have to do this now. And I do take exception to that and I can't support it. And I do hope you understand that. And it's not anything personal. I appreciate all the work you do as members of the authority, and thank you for your service to the village and to Rappahannock County.
I'd like to move to approve the resolution and support agreement as presented and require the RCWSA to report at each regular December meeting of the Board of Supervisors its budget and rate adjustment plans for the ensuing fiscal year. And I just want to thank you all for the hard work that you've put in bringing this to us to get this done. Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I just want to say thank you as well. I
Yeah.
know you guys have done a lot of work and you've answered a lot of questions. And the kicking of the can for over 200 connections is just not possible as far as I'm concerned. So I really appreciate that. If you had lots of acreage in Sperryville and everybody could put in their own system, great. That's not the case here. And I will support this as well.
Yeah,
I just hope we don't lose too many businesses, and then it would really, really drive up rates for residents.
How does it lose a business if we have to shut down?
Yeah.
That's how we lose business.
I don't think that's ever happened, and I don't think there's anything from
No,
DEQ
we've already
to.
had to do that several times.
We have a motion and a second.
And thank you all for all the hard work. And Bonnie, thank you for all the support you brought to bear on this work.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, please, about this. I have people who contacted me that are living on Social Security, and they're saying we cannot pay it. So is there going to be any relief for these people? I mean, this is a shock to them. I personally can put in a system. I've got enough rooms down in the front of my property, put my own septic tank in, and I'm considering that. But there are people that have the small lots, and they didn't put their septic in the river. I don't know what they did with it. A lot of people had pits, but they cannot pay it, and they're widows. There are many more people like that in Sperryville than people realize. So there has to be some relief for them.
Chair, do you mind if I ask one of the Water and Sewer Authority a question?
I think that's appropriate.
Can you all speak to, since we don't set the sewer rates here, it's its own authority, as a county, we have tax relief programs. Do you all have programs where you connect with the ratepayers, have any?
We try
You do
to
not.
make accommodations for people. They want to stretch it out, or they want to pay each month. We bill in arrears quarterly. So if it's easier for some people to pay every month, we work with them that way. But we don't have a fund. It's a great idea if we can find someone who wants to finance it, to fund relief. I know the county does it on taxes.
I mean, it's simple math, that, something like that might be available outside RCWSA, but we have these expenses, we need this much money.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We're going to move on the agenda. Zoning ordinance
take a brief
amendment,
recess?
contractor yards. I'm sorry?
Shall we take a brief recess?
I'll give you 4 minutes.
Thank you. No, I was just trying to give people a chance to get out here.
All right, now that we're back, we are on to old business 1, zoning ordinance amendment, contractor yards.
And I requested that we move this up from the planning commission to the board of supervisors. It's just something we've been working on, and it's to a point where I think it's close to being, to our minds, complete. And we made several changes. I think the one that we really thought helped address a concern was, for the highest level, there was the request to include the light, noise, dust, vermin, fumes / smoke and odors mitigation plan, as well as plans for on-site fire suppression and on-site chemical spills emergency mitigation plan for the highest level of contractor yard. But now we've made it that the zoning administrator or the planning commission may request that sort of information, depending on the application. If it's a fit that we feel is appropriate for that application, we would request that information. So it's not that we expect anyone to adopt this right away. It's just we had gotten this to the board level before, and it was not what I think everyone wanted. So this is just to run it by you and see if you have any concerns, and not necessarily a tonight answer, but just to put it before you for feedback.
Mr. Kohler, who spoke earlier, he hit on two things that actually had jumped out at me when I reviewed this in advance of our meeting. And I don't want to belabor this because I know we have other business tonight, and I don't think we're ready yet, but I appreciate your work on the planning commission to get it to this point. I think the 50 vehicle number definitely jumped out at me as too high. I think everyone knows my strong opinion that a contractor yard should have on it only those vehicles that relate directly to whatever that contractor does. And I think that the current language, or even the original ordinance language, captures that.
It does.
And I think that that's critical to prevent against contractor yards morphing into junkyards, which are not permitted. And then I like Mr. Kohler's comment about downward shielded lights. I know that's something that comes up often, and certainly if you're talking about a high intensity use, even on a large property, it could involve a lot of lights. And I have been dealing with recent complaints even from new houses that don't have downward facing lights and the effect that has on adjacent property owners. So for sure, I was focused on the 50 vehicle number, and I think we should look more closely at that. And I, again, think the downward shielded light question is a reasonable one for us to consider. Yeah.
Well, we wouldn't have any reason to look at the lights for the level 1, but for level 2, it was discretionary, and then for level 3, it's a shall. So we would have the information on lighting for those, which, given the intensity of the uses as they progress, seems to be appropriate.
Okay.
We were sensitive to public feedback, have a little more control over those sorts of items.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is an important one for us to straighten out, and I think we should move on it sooner rather than later. And maybe we all can just take a look at where it is now, and I'll look at the number of vehicle question and see if I can come up with.
Well, and one thing that Karen Hunt had brought up at the Planning Commission was, and this may be too high of a level of detail, but was the different kinds of vehicles, and if there was a payoff to detailing the different types of vehicles that might be on this kind of a property. and leveling the restriction that way. These were really great handouts. And then I have to say, I'm a visual learner, and so the other thing that I kind of think of as a planning commission member is, show me what 50 tractor trailers looks like on 50 acres. Because I don't know what that looks like. And so having some visuals to correspond with the way that it's currently laid out would be helpful too.
So this language here, no more than a combination of 50 vehicles and pieces of equipment shall be stored. Am I reading that and as a conjunctive or a disjunctive or what? Yeah.
It's combined, it's intended to mean vehicles and pieces in any combination, so 5 vehicles and 45 pieces of equipment.
So am I allowed to have 50 vehicles and 50 pieces of equipment attached to those 50 vehicles? Or am I allowed, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or could be attached, or am I allowed to have 50 things?
Right now, it'd be both. Is the and.
Right,
What does
so
that
you
mean?
potentially could have 100 if they unhook.
Yep. I don't think that's how you intended it when you first wrote it.
I thought we talked about pickup trucks with trailers,
Don't know.
but that's an easy fix.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And becomes an or.
So today, there's no limit, right? There are no special requirements whatsoever
No, I
for
get
any contractor's yard.
Yeah.
So the number is certainly, anything in green is something that the board should key into.
That's
Are
what
they?
I'm asking.
Yeah, are they the right numbers?
Yeah, so that, when I read 50, just to quickly say what I was going to say, was that like, if we're reading it as Art just
Yeah,
said.
is that 100 things?
Yeah, that's actually 100 things.
And-
Could be.
And the intent, these are all special exceptions, which all, the board has the opportunity to apply reasonable conditions to align that use and its impacts with the by-right uses in the area. And if it's not written that way now, it could be shifted. A special exception cannot be granted allowing more than 50 vehicles, a piece of equipment. A special exception could be issued with a condition allowing 10 if they were egregious vehicles, cranes.
Right,
And
I
so
get
this
that.
is the ceiling up to which the board could work
Yeah.
with your conditions. And if there were particular impacts from particular types of vehicles associated with a particular contractor's yard, the board could apply conditions to mitigate those impacts. So I think it's probably risky to try to parse out many subcategories of this with a tractor trailer and a dump truck and a this or that, and allow that subjectivity of the board to manage that situation after the applicant is sharing the impacts and telling you how they're gonna control those impacts, and then allowing the board to craft conditions.
Right, I just think that should say no more than 50 vehicles or pieces of equipment.
Yeah,
That's
certainly.
all I'm saying.
I guess I'm speaking to a broader
Yeah,
context.
I know.
And,
I was just being granular.
yeah, and if
Or
two board members agree with you, then it's an easy change for us to put in the next version.
Well, I think Rick's point tonight, when he brought that up, that he thought that was too many, and I think it does, if we're talking about that, I would probably be a little concerned about that. I would probably change that to or.
Good idea.
So I think the intent was no more than a combination of.
Yeah, totally, but what I'm
Yeah.
saying is that, like, imagine you
Yeah,
give this to
yeah.
somebody, and then
Sure.
now we're in court, they're gonna read that, well, that could be 100.
Yeah, I would.
And they're like, well, I don't know.
Add 10 more words to make it more clear, that's for sure. I'm agreeing that
Yeah,
we don't want any questions when it gets to that point.
right.
When a notice of
That's what
violation
this
goes out
says,
because
yeah.
there's 51 of something,
Yeah.
we don't want the judge to tell us that it's okay.
Right.
And then speaking to the lighting, your code includes a section on outdoor lighting that is applicable to your commercial zones. So you could, as, code section here say, hey, the commercial lighting section in 170, 119 applies to these uses, even though they're in an agricultural or whatever other zone.
Okay.
And then it, includes the downshielded and all that stuff.
So it's less sort of.
You don't have to recreate the outdoor lighting.
Yeah, prior art, okay.
I'm reading level 2, I guess, and it's 25 acres or larger. And it says total area 142, total area covered by outdoor storage in connection to this use may exceed the 20,000 square foot limit, but there's no
upper limit.
No upper limit.
Yeah.
So you could cover 25 acres.
You can come forward to the board with a plan that says I have 25 acres and I want to cover all 25 with outdoor storage. And the board can review that and say, boy, there's a lot of impacts to that. No.
Okay.
But the idea is that there might, and we had a general conversation at the Planning Commission, does there exist any scenario in the community where the Board of Supervisors, as informed by the public, thinks that a level 2 should exist? If the answer is no, then don't put it in the code. But if you think that there might be situations where something bigger and more intense and more impactful than a level 1 could exist in the community, then this is the way to say, okay, it's bigger than a level 1, you need a lot more land, and you can do additional, things, but there are going to be conditions attached to it. But that's a fundamental decision for the board to really consider whether you want to open that door.
Feedback not required tonight.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that back.
So
You've tried.
you want this on the next agenda
I didn't want to
then, or-
completely neglect it, but it's been a long day and it is a lot of.
Does the board want this back on the agenda next month?
I mean, I think that would be the way to complete the circuit and get it back to the planning commission.
Agreed. All right, where are we? Who's got the agenda? Let's see. Action related to the county administrator's performance evaluation.
Why don't you lead on this so that Mr. Curry doesn't have to, since it's about him.
That's a very good point. Okay, he just said I should lead on it, so Mr. Curry doesn't have to read his own stuff. We are required every year to do a county administrator's performance evaluation, and we did that earlier today. Gave him feedback and talked through some topics that we thought we could work together better on. This agenda item provides an opportunity for the board to take action, if any, related to the county administrator's annual performance review. We've got some attachments, and this has been on board docs for quite some time. And I will open it up to the board for discussion.
And to be clear, this discussion also relates to a proposed amended employment agreement for the county administrator that the public and we have reviewed. And so I think it's important that it's not a performance discussion. I mean, this relates to a specific proposed change to his employment agreement.
Correct.
So. I'll go ahead and jump in just to get the discussion started. First of all, I've told Mr. Curry before, and I want to just state it emphatically and unequivocally here that, at least in my personal professional life, I'm starting to get old. So over 25, nearly 30 years of professional life, I consider Mr. Curry among one of my finest colleagues and peers. And I am always amazed at the breadth of his skill set and what he is able to do for the county, whether it's a technical matter like a leachate tank at the landfill or revamping our refuse and recycling sites, to dealing with fire and rescue radio systems, to managing ordinance changes, zoning matters. He covers a huge breadth of responsibilities, and I think that we all should be grateful for the fact that he landed here in Rappahannock County after a time of some instability that has been discussed tonight previously by some of the public speakers. One area where I'm especially impressed with what Mr. Curry has brought to bear on our county is his contributions as part of what I've started calling today our fiscal team, to include our revenue commissioner, our treasurer, Mr. Curry, and now Ms. Jewell, the assistant county administrator. And through their work and through the work of our board over the years, the county is now in a position with no debt. The county is in a position where we have a positive cash balance of at least in recent years of at least $6 million at our lowest cash point of the year. Over the last 5 years, aside from property reassessments, which definitely drove the total taxes due from our citizens up, we've still been able to keep the tax rate at or below what we were required by law to hit in terms of the tax rate. At the same time, revenue has become more diversified than previously, where we have increased revenue coming from meals and lodging taxes and from sales tax. And while I don't think anyone on our board or Mr. Curry could take credit for the diversification of revenue, my broader point is that we find ourselves today in 2024 with a very, very sound financial base that I believe puts us in a position to have the luxury of being able to protect Rappahannock County the way that we all want to. And I spoke recently in a Washington Post article that we are not in a position where we are having to chase additional revenue like other localities near us, for example, Culpeper County or Fauquier County. And we can all see what's happened at Clevenger's Corner, and we all know what has been happening in Loudoun County with data centers, et cetera, and now in Culpeper County. And I think that we should all recognize that our strong fiscal position does, while it's not a guarantee, it does put us in a position where we're not having to make accommodations or significant changes to how we protect open space in Rappahannock County and how we prevent development. And I want to make sure to emphasize that Mr. Curry's professionalism over the years, and I believe, is this your 7th year?
It's been 6.5.
6.5 years. So during his
time warp.
I know that's true, but during his time here, we have been put into a position, I think, of fiscal strength, and I hope that we can keep that up. And so, in summary, I want to say that Mr. Curry has brought stability to our county, and as we talked about in closed session today, we've identified areas where we hope there will be improvement. And I know that we have a big question in front of us now, and that is if we agree in the majority that we wish to retain Mr. Curry as the county administrator for Rappahannock County, he has presented to us amendments to his contract. And I would just say that I recognize what people have said tonight and by email or by phone call that we are a small county and we're of limited means. And I understand concerns about paying big locality salaries to our administrator or administrators. And I take all that into account, and I, at least as one member of our board, would like to take the coming weeks to look at what Mr. Curry is requesting and hopefully to come up with some compensation plan that strikes a balance between expressing our continued confidence in him, providing our citizens with ongoing stability from a talented county administrator that we have seen in the preceding years, and to strike some balance in terms of compensation that does not run afoul of what I think people believe can be sustained by a small locality like ours. So I would like to take some more time to wrestle with the details of the proposed changes to the contract. And with all that, I want to thank Mr. Curry for his great service to our county, and I want to express clearly my confidence in him. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just say that in my 8 months, I have found Mr. Curry very detailed, very organized, knowledgeable. I have enjoyed working with him. I've enjoyed working with everyone, but since we're talking about him, I've enjoyed working with him. I do think I agree with much of what Mr. Whitson just said. I'd like the time to take a look at the contract, the proposed contract. We have to strike a balance between keeping a good, stellar employee for the county and being mindful of what that would cost our taxpayers. And we also need to be mindful of what losing Mr. Curry would cost this county and taxpayers. So I appreciate you, Supervisor Whitson, for asking for a little time.
I think it's great when other people say what I have on my mind, because then I don't have to repeat all that. You know, I'm a process person. I think we all work differently, and that is the strength and the weakness of this board. I have to say that I struggle with this process because I'm going to just say it. I don't think we have the expertise to review a contract. I think the county attorney has a contract with the county as well. And so I don't necessarily know that he should be the one reviewing the contract. And then we've had Ms. Jewell putting together much of the details, and I'm sorry she's not here for this contract. And she's subordinate to Mr. Curry. So I don't know the exact term or phrase. I'm sorry, Damaris Miller isn't here. She probably could help me because she seemed to know exactly the sort of job description when she was here earlier. I really think we need a contract specialist to look at this, because I do believe that this contract will set a precedent for the county, and that it will have a trickle-down effect, and that it is important that we get this right. I think you all know that I had just joined the board when Mr. Curry was hired. I was not on the board that hired him initially. That was sort of an infamous meeting where everyone came out of closed session and did not certify. And so we readopted that contract at a later date. And I don't want this board to make some of the mistakes that board did. And it's okay to say we need help, and this is beyond our area of expertise, and our staff is conflicted, and we should look beyond. So that's my takeaway today, and I appreciate my other board members for also believing that additional time is due to this matter, and that we should really concentrate on getting this right. Thank you.
Thank you all for hanging out so late. I know it's getting late. I thought we might actually get close to the 11 o'clock hour, but I don't think we are.
Keep trying.
We can keep trying. We can keep going.
Challenge accepted.
I just want to say that Mr. Curry has an incredible skill set. specifically with landfills that I was unaware of. You built one, right, in Gloucester?
I built one, I've designed it.
He designed it. I just think this county is incredibly lucky to have such an analytically disposed and intelligent county administrator. Thank you, Gary. I've quite enjoyed working with you and learning from you. And I have to say that I have valued going through this process with my colleagues, and I know we've had a long meeting today. But I just want to say that I think that we're better off as a county than I think we've ever been. And it's through group effort, through team effort for sure, whether it's all the constitutional officers and county administration. So thank you. I think we're in a really good spot, and I look forward to the future. I really do. I know that it's a lot of these meetings we kind of focus on hard things, and but that's this process. As Ms. Smith said, I mean, this is process. Anyway, thank you, Gary. I appreciate it.
And I appreciate that everyone has taken to heart, I know, phone calls and emails and side conversations that have happened in the grocery store, probably, or at least the corner store, maybe.
Right.
And I think this is the way it's supposed to work. You know that you've got something that's so important and valuable, and I do believe that Gary got here at the right time, because it could have gone downhill quickly. So I appreciate all the work and hours, and if you don't think he works a lot of hours, he does work a lot of hours. Even after Bonnie was hired, there just seems in government something else to work on, and this board is very good to ask for additional efforts, as we should. But I do know that there is a loss or a cost, opportunity cost, I guess, if you have a very strong member of your team decide to leave, because the only way you get the market increase is to leave to go to another county or whatever role. And it was one of the things that I was taught back in Capital One days in a world that was full of executives, which is you have to train people and spend many years getting up to speed with your particular, in this situation, locality. And I have to say, I'm very impressed with how quickly Gary has grasped Rappahannock County, and he does understand what is important about keeping this county the way it is. So I don't want to think just of it being a salary and, you know, anybody can do the job. There is a loss if you have to start from ground zero. And I think we went through that a little bit when John McCarthy decided to leave. So I appreciate working with you. I know the county meetings that I go to with other counties involved, he is very well respected. And I always feel like when he speaks, people listen. So I do appreciate that. But I agree, waiting a little bit longer to get our thoughts together and really make this hopefully a win-win for everyone, I appreciate.
I just want to say, you know, we've talked a lot about former county administrators before, and I just want to say a big thank you to Debbie Kaiser, who served briefly as our county administrator, because, you know, she was put in the very unenviable position of following a longtime county administrator. And Ms. Kaiser lives in my district, the district that I represent, and I have to say, it wasn't Debbie's failure that it didn't work out in her time as county administrator. I came to the meetings and as an observer, and I think it was a failure of some members of the board to really guide her in her development as administrator and properly support her in that role. So I just wanted to speak on her and acknowledge, you know, I think sometimes through the lens of history, people are treated unkindly, and she really did try very hard for this county, and She really loves this county, not to steal Marlena's thunder, but she really loves Rappahannock County too. So, thank you.
All right, so the will of the board next month,
Yeah,
or?
I think we just put it on our October agenda, and I think it'd be reflected exactly the same way. And Madam Chair, I don't know if you need a motion just to table this item until our October meeting, but if you require that, that's my motion.
I think that makes sense. We have a motion to table. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Are we going to seek any outside expertise in this matter?
I don't need any.
No, I don't think so
I would
either.
like to continue just talking to Gary about it and talk to you guys.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. Temporary signs?
For temporary signs always end up at 11 o'clock at night.
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Table
be right
at the
back.
top of the next
We're
agenda.
losing someone.
We did not have any public hearings at the planning commission, which means that, I believe barring any new information, we won't have a public hearing at the
There's no
next.
public hearing anywhere in sight for anything to do with signs.
Yeah, well, for the Board of Supervisors, next month, for the evening session, there won't be any public hearings coming from the planning commission, right? Because we didn't,
Oh, that's what you're saying?
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Well, it depends on the one,
Whether
it's
that
variable
one.
whether they release it.
Yeah, that's one.
Okay. So what are you saying, that the
I'm
signs?
saying we should have an opportunity to work on it next month, because there will not be, the max number at this point is one, coming from the planning commission.
I second her motion, if that's what it was.
Is that a table again as well?
Yes, I would suggest we table this until
Okay.
next month, that's my motion.
And you second?
Yep.
All right, Mr. Whitson, we just had a motion and a second to table temporary signs to October because we're going to have time.
Well, we should have time, because the planning commission didn't have any public hearings except the one that's been set aside currently, so.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Did you vote, Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
No.
No,
No, you're
raw
kidding.
animal shelter operations agreement.
Sorry.
The board might be aware that the agreement that you have with Rawl is very old. And you have been funding Rawl inconsistent with that very old, outdated agreement. Some believe there might be a newer agreement that can't be found anywhere by either party. And so this is the sort of thing that new county administrators walk into every time they open a drawer in the office.
Locks on the
So
doors.
it has been put off for a while because it just wasn't really pressing. But Mr. Goff, myself, and representatives from Rawl sat down in Mr. Goff's office and tried to outline the important aspects of an agreement between Rawl and the county. And those are essentially for Rawl to operate the state mandated animal shelter, AKA POUND, which is located at the Amosville Refuse and Recycling Center. There are important state rules and requirements for animal shelters, and Rawl handles those for the county, which is a big deal. And the county provides significant funding to Rawl every year in exchange for that. But the relationship isn't clear, who is responsible for maintenance for what, and a lot of different things. And so this agreement seeks to renew our contractual relationship with Rawl and have a platform going forward that will not expire because it's set up so that it cannot expire unless requested by one of the parties. I'd be happy to go through it in any detail you want, but I have an inkling that probably you want to read this between now and October and table it until then.
Perfect.
Do we need a motion?
Is there any urgency? Are we adopting this
There
tonight or
hasn't
just
been an
reviewing it?
effective agreement since before I got here.
I do want to say that I have two constituents who are directly involved in Roll and I think they both contacted me, or one contacted me and I talked to one out at an event. And so they had asked me to follow up, and by the time I followed up, I think it had already come out of the drawer of mystery matters, and it was picked up by Mr. Goff and Mr. Curry. So we should move on this because I did hear from two individuals directly involved in Rawl that they want this cleaned up and final. So let's just talk about it in October. And
If we table it, you've got it right now as discussion information, can we add action?
I will do whatever. the
yeah,
board
I'll make the motion that we table the matter to October, but with the expectation that we will take action at our October meeting.
Second.
I second it.
Van, you want to give up your second?
I give it up.
Okay. Here and Donna, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Van, you're on.
Motion to adjourn.
Second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.
This is great.